Hey everyone, and welcome to my second of two videos about the Miranda Sensorex. In the first video we did a nice overview of things. Now let's take a look at how to actually use this camera. So first thing we're going to do is talk about mounting and unmounting the lens. To unmount the lens when it's on the camera, let's first put a lens cap on. We're going to push this button right here next to the shutter release and rotate it counter or anti-clockwise until it comes off. It's a very short draw. Now you'll notice that there's this lever linkage over here. Ideally, to mount the camera, your two lever arms, the aperture control arm on your lens and on your camera, would line up, but let's say that they don't. So I'm going to set this to f16 and this one to f1.4. To mount the lens, I'm going to look for the orange dot. I'm going to line it up with the orange line. Don't mount the orange dot with the green line. That's a good way to break things. But orange dot to orange dot and rotate, and it's locked in place. Now, these aren't connected. That's an issue, right? Well, this button here drops down and springs back into place, so you could actually just slide them over. It's a little bit more convenient than a similar system that was popular at this time. The next thing we're going to do is load the film. To load the film, we need to open up the back. We're going to push down on this lock release right here, lift up on the lever, and then the back just pops open. The film is going to go in here, so we need to lift up the film rewind knob. We're going to drop our cassette in. We're going to activate the shutter once. Remember to keep your finger away from the shutter when you do that. Also keep the film leader away from it. I'm going to drop the film rewind knob back into place to hold the cassette there. Pull out a leader. Advance the film until we can see this slit right here. There's only one slit on these cameras, but they're very convenient. They have a little hook that the film registration notches fit into. And so they're very good at taking up the film the first time. There we go. Now, with the film properly loaded, you'll want to close the back and lock it and slide it. And now you're ready to go take photos. However, I'm going to show you what happens inside your camera when you're taking photos so that you understand the mechanical process. Anytime you use film, it's one and done, so don't open up your film back from the time you close it after loading the film until you've completely rewound the film after taking all of the photos. So we saw when I pushed the shutter button before that the shutter opened. So there we go. I'm going to advance the film. And so you can see when I take a picture and advance the film, it keeps pulling it forward out of the film cassette until I've used the entire roll of film. There we go. So after you've taken all of your film, you've used your 24 or 36 exposures, now you have to rewind the film. So what you need to do is push the button here on the bottom, and now you're okay to start rewinding. And this is what happens when you rewind the film. It just pulls it back into the cassette. Now, in real life, you would want to rewind it all the way into the cassette before you develop it. Here, listen for this sound, though. Not the grinding, but the clicking. That clicking is the sound of the film coming off of the take-up spool. And so, you'll want to rewind it all the way. I'm going to reuse this, so I'm not going to rewind it the whole way. Take it out. Load in your next roll of film and move on to the next set of photos. The next thing we're going to do is change the battery in this camera. The battery chamber is right here, and all you have to do is rotate it. It should be pretty easy to rotate off. This camera came to me with a corroded battery chamber, and I needed a vice grip to get it off the first time. And you can see there's still a little bit of corrosion, even though I did a fairly good job with some steel wool in there. So here is the battery chamber. The battery door The battery door has this plus symbol on it, and what that means is that the positive contact of the battery is going to touch the battery door. This camera took the old mercury cell batteries. They looked like this, and this battery is the proper size and shape, but the incorrect voltage. So if you use an Li560 battery or a modern PX625 in this camera, you're going to get improperly exposed images by a significant margin. So if you want to properly expose your images, you need an adapter like this, and this was a few bucks off of eBay, although they've gotten more popular lately and are not as cheap as they once were. You take an A76 battery. A76 is preferable to LR44 because an A76 has steady voltage over its whole life. Put it in so that the negative contact is down like that. That becomes your new positive contact. The next thing we're going to do is place the battery in there. There we go. We're going to put the battery cover back on. And this is one of the easiest battery covers to get on and off that I've ever used. So if it is hard to get it on and off, you might have it cross-threaded, and it's a good idea if you're trying to tighten it and it doesn't want to go, back it off and try again. You don't want to cross-thread this because that's a good way to make sure that your battery cover will never go on your camera again. If you do decide to use the modern PX625 batteries instead of the A76 with adapters, you can compensate for the voltage difference by using the Sunny 16 rule. The way that you would compensate is to use your film speed. So let's say that you're going to use ISO 400 film. So we'll set it to 1/500th because that's close enough. And then we'll set this to f16 because it's the Sunny 16 rule. So we'll set the aperture to 16. And then what you would need to do is adjust the ISO until you find the setting that is correct, where 1/500th at f16, taking a meter reading off an object in full sun, gives you a proper exposure indication. That should be about 2 stops with a PX625 or Li560. So for 400 ISO film, it would be 100 ISO. For 100 ISO film, it should be 25, give or take. And that also changes based on how much voltage or power remains left in the battery. Let's talk a little bit about how this camera's light meter works. This model has the averaging meter, so we're going to talk about how that works. If you have an older Sensorex with the spot meter, check the video's description. There's a reference list, and there's a references page for static.photo.net that talks about how the spot meter in the older Sensorexes work. Now, the way it works on the partial averaging meter is that the meter reading is taken from this area that I'm outlining with my finger. So basically, from the front corner here and here, up, this part of the camera right here and down. That's roughly the metering area. Everything else provides exactly 0% of the metering data. The reason that Miranda did that was because their engineers sat down and thought, what is it that throws metering off the most? Well, it's the sky. So if the meter doesn't include any data from the sky, it's going to be more accurate. And as a result, at the time that this camera was on the market, the light meter was one of, if not the best, that was being sold. In the averaging area of the light meter, all light counts equally to calculate the exposure. Because this light meter discounts all of the data from the sky and only counts data from your subject, what that means is that your subject will be properly exposed. Period, end of story. The sky will be either very light or very dark, but that's fine because what you're taking a photo of will be properly exposed, and that's what the light meter is supposed to do. So these old Mirandas had the dual bayonet mount, the bayonet and then the inner M44 screw mount. And the M44 lenses were the older Miranda lenses, and they did not have the aperture linkage. They were called preset lenses. And You could use the M44 lenses like that. If you had, the Mirandas have an incredibly short flange focal distance, so they made adapters to allow you to use any other lens on the market at the time on this camera. You can use Pentax K, Nikon F, Canon FD or FL, M42, Topcon. Any of the major system lenses were usable on this camera with an adapter. And so if you wanted to use an adapter, or if you wanted to do stop-down metering, here's the process for that. You would, since I don't have an adapter, nor do I have a preset lens, I'm going to show you the process pretending that there's a lens on this camera. What you need to do is set the aperture slider to 1.4 or 1.9, whatever the farthest setting is on your camera. On the maximum aperture dial, you need to set this to the lens's maximum aperture. So if you're mounting an f3.5 lens on here from another manufacturer, let's say, what you would do is you would turn this dial to f3.5, okay? Likewise, up to f8. Whatever the maximum aperture is from that manufacturer, you would set it on this dial and keep this as far back as it could be. So the next thing you would do is leave the non-coupled lens, the M42 lens or the Nikon lens, set wide open so that the aperture is wide open. So with that set that way, you've got this all the way down, you've got this to the lens's maximum aperture, you've got the lens mounted on here at its maximum aperture. The next thing you would do is select your shutter speed that you want to use, and then you would use your aperture arm to set the match needle in the viewfinder to get a proper exposure. Once you have the match needle set, you would see what your exposure, what your aperture is here, and then set your lens to that aperture and take that photo. And that would allow you to use non-system lenses on this camera, and this camera could at the time use, like I said, any lens out there. So let's say that you want to take some macro photos. Well, here is a lens reverse ring with an M44 mount that just screws right into the camera. You can then take your stock 50mm lens and screw it in. The M44 reverse lens rings came in a few varieties. This is a 46mm thread mount. They also came in 49 and I believe 52. So there we go. If you wanted to use a 49mm lens, let's say, you would just need to get a step down ring, 49 to 46 to screw onto it first, or 52 to 46. Now what we need to do to take a macro is we need to set the aperture to the widest setting using this linkage, so 1.4 or 1.9 right here. Next we're going to set the input dial to the lowest setting, 1.4 or 1.9. We're now going to leave this lens wide open and focus on what we want to focus on. So we're going to, at that point then, now that we know what we want to have in focus, let's set the aperture to the depth of field that we want and use the shutter speed dial to match the needles for the proper exposure reading. That's it. Now we're ready to take the photo. So with all of that done, we take our macro photo. This is the same process if you're going to use the macro bellows instead of a reversing ring. So a note on macro photos with this camera. I've used a lot of cameras to take macro photos, and of every camera that I've ever used for macro photography, this one has the most accurate exposures of any of them. And yeah, it's a bit wonky, the process that's needed to get a macro photo, but it works, and it works extremely well. Let's talk a little bit about flash photography with this camera. One thing it never had was a hot shoe anywhere on the camera, but it did have a PC port over here. And that's fine because this was a professional grade camera, and professionals don't use flashes on hot shoes anyway. If you see somebody with a flash on a hot shoe, I will tell you what, they're not a professional photographer. So this had two types of flashes, X and FP. FP was for the old bulb type flashes. They don't make them. Just leave it in X because the odds of you ever using an FP flash ever again are infinitesimally small. So for X sync flashes, it is 1/60th of a second or slower. And that's it. All you would need to do to control your flash is plug your PC cable in here and run it out to your flash. If your flash only has a hot shoe and no cable import, then you get a cable to hot shoe converter and then plug it into here. And then you could still use your flash. The other thing you could do is get an RF unit, modern RF unit, and then you can control your flash this way and then not have any cables. So some special features about this Miranda Sensorex. It had a very short flange focal distance, as I said, and it had adapters for every other system camera lens of its day. So buying a Miranda allowed you to use any other lens out there. The shutter design was specific for low noise and low vibration to make it less distracting and to make images sharper. And I will say that this camera has one of the quietest shutters that I've ever used. It's as quiet as the original Asahi Pentax or K3 that I use for these videos, and it has got one of the softest shutter actions, as soft as the original Asahi Pentax or K3. The shutter on this camera is simply amazing. Let's take a quick listen to this shutter. So for comparison, let's try it against the much later Pentax MX, which is significantly louder, or against the much later Minolta SRT 101, which is significantly louder, or against a leaf shutter. And yeah, the Miranda sounds closest to the leaf shutter. It's still louder, but it's an extremely quiet shutter. So Miranda lenses have a mixed reputation. Miranda only made the bodies. They did not make the lenses. The lenses were all farmed out to other manufacturers. Typically, however, the Miranda lenses are above average to excellent, and there are just some outliers, like there are with every maker, that are of poor quality, and those unfortunately have earned Miranda a reputation of not being good lenses. The aperture and meter on this camera have no click stops, so meter accuracy is more accurate than any other camera made at the time. Now let's see what that means. Here's your aperture lever. I'll hold the stop down button right here so that you can see how it works. As I move the lever, the aperture opens and closes smoothly. Okay? With other makes, it would click into place every stop, or every half stop, or every third of a stop. With the Miranda, there is quite literally an infinite number of possible aperture settings. This also related to the meter, in that the meter itself moved as smoothly as the aperture blades, and the meter didn't stop at places along the dial. So there were an infinite number of meter readings that you could get with this camera. And this camera, more than anything else on the market at the time, gave users unlimited control over exposure and very fine control over exposure accuracy. 7 iterations of this model camera exist, not including the Sensorex C. Since I don't have all 7 to show you and explain the differences, there is a Camerapedia link in the video's description, and that discusses the different variations. There is one inaccuracy in it. The table is incorrect regarding the maximum apertures. At least from the 770 series onward, they opened up the cameras to 1.4. This camera has a maximum aperture of 1.4, and it is a 770 series. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look through the viewfinder, and I'm going to show you some viewfinder and focusing tricks with this camera that no other camera make can offer. So here we are looking through the viewfinder of the Miranda Sensorex, and we can see my still life of filters and stuff down there. So there on the right side is the match needle system. As I move the aperture, the match needle moves up and down. There we go. As I move the shutter speed, the match needle moves up and down. So I'm going to turn on the light meter. You can see it springs to life there. Now I can adjust either the aperture or the shutter speed and aperture to get a very, very precise meter reading. With other cameras, if the aperture only goes in click stops, I might be able to get this close or that close, but not perfectly centered like that. So that is an exceptional offering. Here's the non-interchangeable focusing screen. It's a Fresnel screen with a central collar. No indication of what's being metered, the metering area, unfortunately. But as you can see, it's very easy to focus and incredibly sharp. It's got a little bit of dirt inside of it. It's a two-piece glass screen, and I can't take it apart to get the dirt out. One drawback about these cameras is that you can't take them apart, the viewfinders apart, to get the dirt out, the focusing screen specifically. But you can get some dirt off the focusing screen. So here's one thing you can do with the Miranda that you cannot do with, say, a Nikon F. If you take the viewfinder prism off, this will still be in focus. The Nikon F had an interchangeable focusing screen, so you could not do this. You could not focus the Nikon F accurately with the prism off of the body. And let's turn that meter on again. And you can see the needle over there on the left side. There we go, being matched up. It's red so that in this mode you can more easily see it. It appeared black as we saw looking through the viewfinder, but with the prism off, when it's red, it's more easy to see the needle and to match it up with the camera settings. You can see a depth of field preview button right there. Taking the prism off is an especially good trick if you want to do macro photography. This allows you to look through the prism at the macro subject. You can also do waist level photography without having to buy a special waist level prism. This is one of the things that was unique to Miranda cameras. With either the prism on the camera or it off, you have 92% frame coverage. Now what that means is, let's say that what you're seeing right now represents the image that's going to come back on the film. In the viewfinder, you would lose 4% off the top and bottom that you wouldn't see in the viewfinder. That gives you a little bit of space to crop when you get your image back. It also had 1.0 magnification. Going onto that focusing screen, that is life size of what's going to be on the film. Looking through the prism, that is life size of what's going to be on the film. So let's go through the entire process now of how to take a photo with this camera. So let's say that this is the scene you want to take a photo of. You're going to look through your Miranda, focus what you want to have be in subject. You're going to look at the match needles over here and set your aperture and shutter speed to the proper setting for your exposure. Of course, you'll need to have your light meter on for that. got it framed and composed, take your picture, advance your frame, and you're all set. Let's say you want to do a double exposure with this camera. Well, it's possible, but it's a little bit fiddly. So the first thing you need to do is rewind a little bit until you feel tension on the film. You don't want to crank it, you don't want to rewind the film, you just want to get it to where the film says, nope, don't rewind me anymore. Okay, no problem. Hold that. Select your shutter speed and aperture. So let's say your aperture is at f5.6 and your shutter speed is at 1/125th. If you want to do a double exposure, you need half as much light, which is 1/250th. So take your first image in your double exposure. Next, you're going to hold down on the bottom the film rewind button. You're going to hold this knob with your fingers, and then you're going to advance the film. And that will rearm the shutter without advancing the actual film. Take your second photo, advance the film. Next thing you want to do is put your lens cap on your camera and take a dead frame. You need to take a dead frame because the second time when you're actually advancing the film, it takes a moment for the sprocket to re-engage and your registration is going to be off. So if you don't take a dead frame, your double exposure is going to overlap the next frame and you're going to have a ruined double exposure and a ruined next frame. Alright, so that is it. That is my second of 2 videos on the Miranda Sensorex. If this video was helpful, please leave me a thumbs up. That lets me know I'm on the right track. If you have any questions, suggestions, or so forth about this video, please let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer questions, and I'm pretty good about getting back to you guys pretty quickly. If you're an amateur photographer and you'd like to share photos you've taken with the Miranda Sensorex, feel free to post a link in the video description, and I'm more than happy to do that for you amateurs. I'm an amateur too, so I'm not saying like you amateurs, like it's anyway. Amateur photographers are welcome to share their Sensorex photos in this video's description as a comment. If you have suggestions for future videos, please let me know, and if I have the technical know-how and equipment, I'm more than happy to do those for you. If you'd like to subscribe to this channel, to my channel, that will let you know when I have more photography and camera related videos that are released. And one last thing. Thank you guys for watching, and take great photos.